AFR Talk. AFR Talk. This is Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth.
Welcome back. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. And we are with the real Woodward, Chris Woodward, American Family News, and onenewsnow.com if you're looking to get it online. This is his Twitter feed, at AFNC Woodward. And you can, what is that again? AFNC Woodward. That's his Twitter. He is the business and environment reporter for, as stated, American Family News. Hey, Chris, selfies. Have you ever taken a selfie?
I've taken group photos with people before. Does that count as a selfie?
Just of yourself, though?
No.
That makes one of us.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. See,
I have been selfish at times, but I've never been involved in a selfie.
Well, Hannah has taken a selfie. I know, part of the team, as you well know, Hannah on the phones. I have too, and to the point where, Catherine said, "You got to stop doing
that." Picture on Facebook a couple of weeks ago with you and your dog, was that a selfie?
It was not a selfie.
Oh,
actually, that was my best half, Catherine. But thank you for asking.
Yes.
And did you see how the dog posed? That's Lady Bear. She's amazing, on cue and everything. So that only took me 3 hours of makeup to get.
Oh,
that was nice. All right. Well, anyway, people take selfies, right?
Sure.
But if you're at an event that is a memorial for arguably a celebration, too, of a man's life, they didn't celebrate his blind spots. I digress. And that would be Nelson Mandela.
Mm-hmm.
And another world leader, an ally, says, hey, we want to take a picture with you.
Sure.
And the Danish prime minister was doing just that. And the idea of doing it with the British prime minister, David Cameron, well, it got a lot of coverage.
It sure did.
And Today's Show said, you know what? There's a couple things being said about this picture, and I don't think they're fair. And so you brought on Lauer Power and the Today Show crew to defend the practice of Obama's selfie. Roll it.
The president might have caused a diplomatic incident if he had declined the invitation to be in a photo with two longtime allies.
It wasn't a funeral. It was a memorial service. And it was a celebration. It was a
People singing and dancing all around them.
Yeah, right.
But then if you widen up here, it does not look like Mrs. Obama is amused. There's a different angle there. But if you go back to the original selfie, she does not look incredibly amused. And people are saying that perhaps she was angry about the behavior.
I think we've all been caught in the moment. Sometimes you get your picture taken where you don't have the right expression. She's at a memorial service, a somber occasion. So
she could have been thinking about 1,000 other things, and you have no idea,
I think people
no
are
way to
blowing
read
that out of
into
proportion.
that.
But they're gonna take it and go with the negative.
No question.
As for the selfie scene around the world, we're learning a little bit more about this. The photographer who took this picture of the selfie says that just a few seconds later, Michelle was actually laughing and enjoying herself with them as well. She wasn't actually upset as she looks in that photograph.
He said she was laughing a few seconds before as well.
Now, that was CBS News at first with Bill Plant, Giggles Plant. And then you have the Today Show crew. And then you have Jonathan Karl of ABC with the Good Morning America and George Stephanopoulos, all talking about the selfie and how, well, it's okay. Your thoughts?
You know, it is true that there were people dancing and having a good time at the memorial. So in that regard, someone might say, well, it's not that big of a deal for two leaders or two or three world leaders to be taking a selfie of themselves. However, two of those people in that picture are in charge of people's lives in Afghanistan right now. And certainly when they're laughing and joking at a memorial for the dead, another person could say, well, you guys should be, a little more composed. And as far as the little group chat on the Today Show goes, what does it matter what Al Roker thinks?
How dare you?
He's there for the weather.
Weather is very important. And Al Roker is the weatherman. I mean, he's on the Weather Channel.
Sure, he does a great job. Does a great job.
Well,
Does
does
it matter what he thinks about a selfie is another thing.
No, well, again, that goes to the idea of where people get their news and why and what the personality is. But here's what gets me about it. look, I can understand how this can happen. I know Michelle Obama was, moved afterwards, only after, it was exposed that people had to mention that because she looked rather disgruntled. And I always thought whenever I see one of these pictures and that expression is there, I'm thinking maybe it's Photoshopped. But I just wonder if they would have done the same thing for George W. Bush.
Obviously nobody, that's a question that's always going to be thrown at. I will say this. I posted the selfie on my Facebook page. And I said, regardless of politics, do you think it's right to take a selfie at a memorial for the dead? And I got a ton of mixed reactions from people of various ethnicities, some of which said, you know what, it's fine. He would have wanted it that way. Other people say, no, it's a funeral of sorts. You're supposed to be somber and remembering that person. Bottom line, a lot of people are divided, and they all have differing opinions.
Well, tomorrow we get one of those responses, actually, from Tim Wildman, who will be on in the first segment. And
Mr. President.
Mr. President, yes, he will be with us. The president will be with us, the American Family Association, Tim Wildman. And I thought he had a great reference to that regarding the celebrity in chief. But I, again, digress because I want to bring it back to Al Roker. And what's your deal with Al Roker? I just don't understand why you go after Weatherman. Weather is a huge deal. It controls everything.
It was raining at the memorial.
Okay, yeah, so there you go.
There you go.
But you also have to look at the new foundation for our economy, Chris Woodward, where you're more versed in this than I am. And that's tough for any talk show host to admit to anybody. But for me especially. But you know more, you're the business and environment reporter. The new foundation for our economy is dealing with climate change, green energy.
Sure.
And we have these weather events, and I hear climate change supporters oftentimes saying, they formerly talked about global warming until the temperature went flat, often saying, you know why it's so cold outside? It's because of climate change, and it's going to get worse, and we better do something about it, and that means take more regulatory action that could choke off economic growth. Now, we have two people speaking, one from the Sierra Club, speaking on the show of CNN and talking about climate change. And this happened Tuesday night, courtesy of our good friends at newsbusters.org. And we have Michael Brune from the Sierra Club versus Climate Depot's Mark Morano.
Right.
And it's a longer clip, but I want you to evaluate this exchange. It's going to be about 90 seconds. Roll it.
I do. All of what Mark said would be very compelling if it were true. This is something that has been settled. The science is settled right now. The top climate scientists in the world, thousands of them, are now as confident that climate change is real as they are that cigarettes make people sick. The only folks who are arguing this are the occasional climate skeptic or the people who are paid for by the fossil fuel industry. We know that the extreme weather events that we're seeing, the record wildfires, the record droughts, the extreme storms that we're seeing, the hurricane that we saw with a 1,000-mile diameter that hit the eastern seaboard late October last year are precisely what scientists have said would be the cause of global warming and climate change.
I mean, it's a wild theory. They had the similar theories in the 1970s, trying to blame extreme weather on these kind of variables. The bottom line is the Arctic ice was started monitoring in 1979 at a high point of the 1970s global cooling scare. We lost ice. This year, by the way, we rebounded, depending on what date you want to pick, almost a third or more of the ice. And global sea ice currently is at highest in 25 years. Antarctic sea ice is at or near record, which no one wants to talk about Antarctic sea ice because it's inconvenient to the narrative. But the idea that we're having extreme weather, listening to Michael talk there, it's just, it's mind-boggling. I mean, the Earth is geologically billions of years old, and we're sitting around here scratching our heads saying, wow, we had a hurricane last year, which was barely a Category 1 when it hit. And then, by the way, it's not me, and he's mentioning funding, by the way, which I think is funny. The Sierra Club took $26 million from natural gas, and Michael has the audacity to
bring that up. Now tell me,
did you cut it off, or is that where?
No, that's where it did get cut off. To bring it up in essence, and it is funny that exchange took place because the finished statement has the audacity to try to imply that skeptics are fossil fuel funded. Tell me something. That exchange, who won that discussion or made that point? If you were judging a debate, you'd say one way or another.
I would certainly say Morano threw out more comments there towards his side of things, enough to dismiss what the other side was saying. And I've talked to Mark a good bit. I've had stories with him, and I've thrown out the question before when he said, this group is funded by that or that group is out for government money. Of course, they would say this, and I've said, well, people say that you're an advocate for oil companies, and he answers the question. Certainly some of the environmental groups are funded in part or maybe in full by groups that are completely opposed to oil and gas. So for those particular people to say this group would say this because they're funded by that, it makes their arguments irrelevant when you're just saying they're a shill for big oil or a shill for big wind or ethanol or whatever.
Chuck Grassley. Oh, pardon me. Big wind. So, something got me there. Okay, so what you're saying is when you evaluate something, you're evaluating it on the case that the person is making, not necessarily what is funding what the case is. You're putting it on the content and the substance, as opposed to oftentimes ad hominem attacks that turn into ad hominem attacks.
Right. And, he said the science is settled. That's something a lot of people that believe in global warming / climate change, or they're alarmists, as some skeptics may refer to them in that way. They say the science is settled, but certainly there are a number of scientists and researchers who say otherwise. There are a ton of meteorologists who believe in climate change. There are certain schools that teach meteorology that teach climate change, but there are a bunch of meteorologists and other folks that are deeply involved in that field that say otherwise.
Man-made climate change?
As far as teaching,
by the idea of CO2 causing climate change?
Yeah, I've worked with a number of meteorologists and weather personalities. Those are people that don't have the official title. They vary on that issue. Some say yes, and some say, oh no, it's the silliest thing since the 1970s Ice Age scares that were all across magazines and newspapers.
Best answer I've ever received was from Newt Gingrich, who said, truly, I don't know. And went back and forth with the evidence, but he did know that he felt that regulating it at this juncture, because it is not, we don't know enough.
Sure, and there have been a ton of Republicans in the last 10 years, especially, that have done some things or approved funding for this or that out of concern that it's real, and those that say no, it's not. We need to talk about this. They get to be subjects of campaigns and called flat earthers.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't even understand how that's an insult. Everybody knows the earth is flat. Now tell me this, Chris Woodward, when you look at the green energy programs, we've had bipartisan support for ethanol.
Sure, for years.
We can grow our food. We can grow our fuel. Right. It's a great thing, and I think it's a nice idea, certainly. But subsidizing it has become a particular issue as of late, as everybody's looking at the investments we made, especially into the green energy technologies. Right. I understand there's been movement in legislation from Tom Coburn.
Right.
Your thoughts?
Yeah.
That's the story.
Senator Coburn out of Oklahoma, the Republican, has joined together with Senator Feinstein, the Democrat out of California, two very big names in the world of politics, especially in the Senate. They've teamed up with about 8 co-sponsors at the moment, pushing legislation that would eliminate the ethanol mandate under the RFS. Now, the RFS is a law that requires a certain amount of ethanol be blended into gasoline. And the way it was done under President Bush, by the way, he signed it, was that you have to increase the amounts of ethanol as we go higher. A number of groups have been deeply divided over that. In Coburn's case, he is against corn ethanol, period. His press release today, which I actually tweeted out, said that this thing costs taxpayers billions of dollars. It raises the price of our food and hurts consumers in general and things of that sort. lot of ethanol proponents have said otherwise in stories I've done with them. Anytime we do ethanol, I have the
you have both sides on.
I have Bob Deneen at RFA a lot on, and then we have people like Sterling Burnett or Dan Kish, two very big names in the energy field, if you follow ethanol and wind and things of that sort. So definitely there are a lot of people out there that are divided on the issue, and they will call you and email you a lot when they hear something they don't like. I certainly know from past experience I have been accused of being a horrible person by someone who later identified himself as someone who handed out Bibles, which to this day I still find amazing.
Was he from the Westboro Baptist Church?
He was not. He was not.
We have the Moron Patrol. I didn't know you got actually contacted by the Moron Patrol.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, I was going to have to change my name to Bob Woodward. I was going to have to take a new alias or something,
Well, the overall point is what I appreciate about you, and it sounds like I'm patronizing you, but I'm not. This is sincere, and this is why we do this segment. As a journalist, you've got to go both sides, and you got to look at them and then allow people to decide. It's a lot easier to give an opinion. But we get our opinion from being informed from people like you. So without journalists, we don't have commentators because we won't be in the know. And you do a great job. What is your Twitter feed, mister?
It is at AFNC Woodward, at AFNC Woodward, and I will not be posting any selfies.
That's good. I'm thinking of, I'm probably going to get a text from my wife, but there's one selfie that is, I mean, these are not anything that would be in a way risque.
Right.
It's not like that. But I look pretty Hulkster in this one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I'm such a narcissist.
Just say the views and pictures of this person do not necessarily reflect those of, and go on from there.
Chris Woodward, sincerely, stay classy. Love you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth returns on the flip side. AFR Talk.